Kalikumutima and Company Advocates, translating visions into reality.
Amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, you are most welcome to our discussion this week. And as is always our custom, we always want to be topical, want to be relevant, but we also want to be very insightful and informative. And so this week we're looking at the floods crisis in Kampala, but also across the country. And so we're giving it a legal, architectural, but also planning perspective. And I would like to welcome panelists to introduce themselves first and foremost, and then we'll delve deep into the discussion, which promises to be very, very insightful. And I personally look forward to it. So I'd like to begin with our very good host. That is Counsel Kalikumutima, who is the Chief Executive Partner here at Kalikumutima and Company Advocates. Counsel, you're most welcome.
Thank you so much, Howard. You have been kind enough to introduce me, but I'll do it again for formality. My name is Kalikumutima Deo, Rotarian. I'm the Chief Servant at Kalikumutima and Company Advocates. It's an honor to be here today. Always looking forward to opportunities to fill the information gap. I thank you. And looking forward to a very fluid discussion from our panelists today.
Right. Thank you, Counsel, for having us, but for also being very committed to bridging the knowledge gap and to sharing your insights as and when we invite you to join us on the discussion. And I would like now to welcome Architect Verna Mbabazi. And you've been here before. Thank you so much for joining us again. Today we really look forward to the discussion. So please do introduce yourself and what you've been doing, a bit related to the discussion, and then we can pick it on from there.
Yes, thank you. And I greet the viewers, the listeners. Verna Mbabazi, Mwinganisa. I'm an architect in private practice, a principal architect at Evolution Edge. And I am really happy to be here once again.
Okay, amazing. Thank you, Architect Verna, for joining us. We'll move to Dr. Kiganda, who's making his debut today. Doctor, you're most welcome.
Thank you.
Yes. Please do share with us a bit about what you have been up and about.
Yes. My name is Michael Galakunde Kiganda. I am an urban policy and governance consultant with Uganda Management Institute. I am technically a registered fiscal planner in Uganda, but I concentrate much more on teaching. I also am an expert in land use planning, land use and regional development planning. On the other part of it, I am the Deputy President of the Uganda National Urban Forum. So I am excited to be here in this discussion about very pertinent issues in urban in Uganda.
Thank you, Dr. Kiganda, for joining us. Looking forward to hearing from you. Great. Thank you so much to our panelists for that introduction. We're now going to take a deep dive into our discussion. And I just want to give some context to it. I mean, we've had quite a number of series of flooding in Kampala, actually across the country, but our discussion will be majorly around Kampala. And just looking back to the most recent incident, which happened on the 26th of March, where for about 6 hours, literally the whole city was sort of cordoned off as if, you could not access literally anywhere you wanted to go because of the flooding. And we saw that it wasn't really just, an isolated incident that happened before, but probably the magnitude. And so you find personally, it takes me about 10 or 15, sometimes 20 minutes to get to office. That day it took me about 3 hours, right? To even wait for the flood to sort of subside and to find a way of coming to office. And that was the case for many people that were trying to make their way to work on that particular day. But when we look at the loss that was related, but also the time lost, right? And we see that we've seen many scenarios of those even before, and the projections we have, for example, from the Uganda Climate Risk Country Profile report, which was undertaken by the World Bank, indicating that we're going to see many more of these, series of flooding, but also we're going to see the loss ultimately in terms of GDP increasing, but also the loss in terms of property, but also to lives. And it's something that needs to be given urgent attention, both at a policy level, but also when it comes to engaging the masses, because as as we are going to discover some of the challenges that are actually created at the ground level when it comes to, for example, the construction of the buildings, when it comes to the enforcement of the laws, when it comes to holding perpetrators accountable, especially when it comes to the zoning regulations, among others. So our discussion is going to look at the legal perspective, going to look at the architectural perspective, but also the physical planning perspective. And at this juncture, I would like to invite Counsel Dale to just share with us a bit about the legal perspective. What are some of those laws that can guide us when it comes to addressing the flooding crisis in Kampala, but also across the country?
Thank you, Howard. The laws we do have. Of course, there are schools of thought that feel we don't. We do. The question is, are they implemented? How is the enforcement being done? But allow me go back to that very unfortunate period. And during that period, we had a lot of finger pointing. KCC, no government of Uganda, no NRM, no NUP, all the nonsense. Excuse my kind language, but I find it befitting in my humble opinion. We do have the laws. If you look at the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, the framers of the Constitution, bless them, did envisage these scenarios. To be precise, under Objective 27, where the concept of sustainable development is embedded, the state is enjoined to promote sustainable development. What is sustainable development? I'm not going to go into academics here. We have the good professor. But my basic understanding of sustainability is that there should be continuity. So, Advocate Howard Mosigwa, you are stuck in jam for 3 hours while Kalikumutima was waiting for you. Your dear clients were waiting for you. Time lost. We cry every day, then we repeat, but we have the laws. Yes, they are there. But what are we doing about them? Look at the rest of the Constitution. Article 39. Every Ugandan has a right to a clean and safe environment. Article 26. Every Ugandan has a right to own what? Property. Now, I'm not going to delve so much into legalese on whether which article is absolute or not, and which one should be enjoyed more or not. But these rights come with attendant what? Duties. Let me touch the right to own property. Yes, the state does have the mandate. Okay? But you as an ordinary Ugandan, what is your duty? We talk about corruption, for example. There is corruption, but corruption is a two-way what? Street. There is someone giving, there is another what? Receiving. So similarly with construction, X is allowing people to build in wetlands, notwithstanding the laws. But Y is pushing so hard to be allowed to build in a what? In the wetland. And they're going to tell you, as a Ugandan, I have a right to own this property. Yeah? Now, Article 245 gives the Parliament of Uganda mandate to legislate, to create laws to ensure that we have a safe, clean, protected environment. And there's a list that I'm going to take us through. We have the National Environment Act. I thank God in Uganda we have NEMA. There are people who don't even know the mandate of NEMA. Just to simplify it, their mandate is to ensure and promote that we have a safe what? Environment. They have been chasing people off wetlands. Of course, then comes the issue of fairness and equity in implementation of mandate. Some people are not being touched. Some people are touched. That is a discussion for what? For another day. Now you have KCCA. For example, Kampala Capital City Authority is established by statute. Part of their mandate as an authority is to manage urban what? Development. But this takes us back to the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, that whatever development we have in Kampala or the rest of Uganda should be done in a sustainable what? Manner. Then we have an act that I enjoy so much. I'm not going to say that I'm a land consultant or we have so many consultants and experts. I leave that to the consultants and experts. But Section 45 of the Land Act does enjoin the government of the Republic of Uganda and the local government to ensure the protection of environmentally sensitive what? Areas. What are environmentally sensitive areas? Doctor, I'm not going to disturb you and ask you to answer that because it's a bit academic for me. Howard doesn't like that at all. We have wetlands, swamps, rivers, forests, national parks. So government, again, is enjoined to protect these and the local governments. So the law is there. Then we have the Local Government Act. District councils, again deriving their mandate from the Local Government Act and indeed the Constitution, have the mandate to ensure that we have a safe environment, to ensure that we protect the environment. We have the Building Control Act. My dear sister, Architect Verna Mbabazi, loves that act. I will summarize. We have that act in place to ensure that we have safe, decent development, or, to put it so simple, construction. Again, the concept of sustainability. I could go on and on the laws. Do we need more? Yes, I feel we do, but what we have is actually what? Sufficient. We need to address the issue of implementation. I thank you.
Right, thank you so much, Counsel Deo, for laying the ground for us, especially because we understand that the law sort of sets the foundation for literally everything, setting what acceptable standards that we have, but also to ensure that where there's been non-compliance, we can still bring perpetrators to book. I think that's why the law is very important. But we also know that many people do not even know that some laws exist, but even the substance or the import of those laws as far as, for example, environmental conservation is concerned, or even standards for buildings, or even where there's been infringement of the laws, where the safety valves, how they can be accessed to bring those perpetrators to book. And Council mentioned the Building Control Act and, of course, the structures under there. But I just want to expand it a bit and bring in Architect Verna on that to find out from you and from your experience what you've observed, how the designing of some of these buildings and structures, basically the shaping of this development, especially in Kampala, how some of those practices have sort of contributed in a way to the crisis we have at present.
Thank you. How have architectural and construction practices contributed to most probably the flooding going on? There is the issue of unplanned settlements in wetlands. Sometime back, I looked at the map of Bwaise of 1960. Vegetation, swamp. They even drew those papyrus, So basically, Bwaise is a swamp. Now, or a floodplain, if you could call it that. So you definitely get trouble there. So construction in such places causes problems, and they're normally informal, because when we as architects are going to submit a drawing, we always check where is the famous NEMA line, and we have to make sure that our client is not out of the line. And if they are, we tell them, don't even bother building. So it's normally the informal people who fall in that trap, building in the wetlands. And also we have this paving, we surface our compounds, hardly any green, because you want your car to park. So when it rains, all this water runs off. Okay, in Kampala, rainwater harvesting is not so popular because our air is not so good, and therefore the rain absorbs it. But we should be able to at least harvest some of this water, and so greening, etc. So all in all, I think that our current architectural and construction practices are not good, are not favorable, really, to make sure that we control the flooding. Yes, in a nutshell, what we can do, of course, there is an urban planning, a physical planning aspect of it, which I will let Dr. to handle, so we can have some rules for different neighborhoods. How much can you pave? What paving material do you use? How much water can we let go back into the ground and not run off? Things like that.
Thank you, Architect Verna. So now you mentioned the physical planning component again towards the end, and I would like to invite Dr. Kiganda. Just again drawing from your experience and what you have observed and some of the probably clients you have dealt with, even when you have ventured into academia, some of those case studies that you probably identified. What are some of those failures and gaps, in our physical planning policies, but also practices that have contributed fundamentally to the flooding crisis we see in Kampala, but also across the country?
Thank you very much. I think before we even go to the failures of the practices, we need to know the causes of this flooding. And I would say that flooding in Kampala is not a problem in itself. It is a problem of problems. It is a problem caused by problems. And the problems that cause flooding are many. And they concurrently contribute to what we eventually see as the flooding, the one that you had quoted of the other season. If I would to take you back in historical times, the Bible talks about flooding as one of the curses God can send to his people. And you remember the infamous Noah, the flooding of Noah as a manifestation of the curse. So it has not changed. There are many factors, but I would single out 6 of those factors which work together to create the product we see on our street now. Of course, the first factor is urbanization. Kampala contributes to 65% of the urban areas in Uganda. So all urban areas in Uganda combined, Kampala is 60% or even more. So it is highly urbanized with characteristically informal settlements. These are settlements that were not planned. And the urbanization includes construction of homesteads all over the place. And one of the things why we build homesteads is that we don't want water and the sunshine to fall on us. So we are creating the flood by urbanization. And it is unfortunate that these floods are not about to end, because as urbanization increases, the flooding will definitely come. The second challenge is our industrialization policy. The policy of promoting industrialization even when it takes place in wetlands. Actually, the truth of the matter and characteristically is that a biggest part of our industries are allocated in what would be wetlands. If you look at the entire industry area, if you look at the Chambogo stretch, which has become a flood zone, if you look at the Namamve, if you go on Bombo Road, all the way, the industries are lined in the wetlands. When you go to Mbale, they are in the wetlands. And I really don't know why. Some people think that industries can only be successful when they are in wetlands. Now, this one contributes a very big part to our flooding. Besides industrialization, the Wananchi are also encroaching on the same wetlands, so making the wetlands a risk factor, trying to convert them into dry lands, not forgetting their ecological characteristics and functions that they do. The other factor that is also responsible for the flooding you see in Kampala is the inadequate drainage infrastructures that are constructed in Kampala. Until recently, drainage has not been part of our road component. And we have very many roads in the city that are not designed with drainage channels. We have the Kampala Drainage Master Plan. It is there, which is not implemented. We are waiting for the World Bank. Even areas where the drainage channels were planned to be, they are not there. And we say we don't have money. Those of you who have stayed in Kampala for a long time, it took us years and an intervention of the World Bank to construct the Nachivubo drainage channel. It took us political challenges to construct a drainage channel in Bwais. There are very many areas in the city that are designated as drainage areas where no drainages have been constructed. So the existing drainages are too small for the pressure on them, resulting into flooding. The other one is the trade order or disorder. And this is a factor that is usually underlooked. The question is, how do you do business in your urban areas? We trade on the roadsides, we trade on the drainage channels, we build bars in wetlands, we do everything the way we want in the name of getting money. This trade disorder that is characteristic of our urban areas has greatly contributed to the flooding. If you take an example of the Buvera is polythene bags. Whenever there is trade, there is left a lot of polythene bags. These polythene bags, even where drainage channels were constructed, they come and clog them. They come and clog them because somebody was doing business there, and the other people, after doing business, they left the byproducts are thrown into the drainage channels. That even if the existing drainage channels would do something to stop the flooding, the trade disorder is working against them. We have the issue of climate change. And this is, people don't see climate change. When we talk about climate change, they think it is a Western problem. The current rains we receive now are unprecedented rains. The downpour is excessive to what we are traditionally used to. And this is an indicator of climate change. Usually climate change is associated with global warming. But in the equator and tropical areas, climate change can be associated with flooding, receiving excessively more rains than you are used to as a result of warming taking place somewhere else. So this rain is not normal. It flows like a tap is powering water, an indicator that we have already reached climate change consequences. And lastly, the land use conflicts. Everybody wants to use the land the way he always bought that land for, in disregard of the environmental consequences of land use. Now everybody is constructing what he wants. And the optimum land use practices of the people in urban areas cannot translate into sustainable land use. They end up conflicting with one another. So those are the origins that should form the basis of our discussion. Maybe later on, if you give me time, I will talk about what can we do or what does land use planning have to do with those.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Kiganda. Of course, you will have that latitude because our discussion is solutions oriented, and so after we've understood the challenge at hand, then we also have to make some suggestions, some proposals on what needs to be done. And I think I think Architect Verna did that a bit when she shared. But you make very pertinent observations, especially drawing to the waste crisis, how we are managing our waste, because you could have the channels in place, the drainage channels, but if you do not solve the waste crisis, and recently I saw, and probably saw that footage as well, of a young man who was, dumping all the waste that he could in the in the drainage channel, and that is just one individual that was cited, but we know it's a culture here in Uganda where when it rains, it's an opportunity for everyone to release whatever sewage, whatever waste they have, and they don't care where it is headed, and of course that also poses a public health question that we shall get to, but also the question of climate change as well. The World Bank report I alluded to earlier indicated clearly that we are now at that point we're experiencing the effects of climate change, and so getting into even the designs, we need to have what we call climate resilient designs and structures that can sort of withstand some of these crises as and when they happen. But also the Kampala drainage master plan that you talked about is something that people have been talking about, and they're saying, well, we don't have the funding for it, we're waiting for development partners, but we're already experiencing the challenges of not implementing that drainage master plan. And I think at the end we should also have a discussion on how we can sort of mobilize or come up with innovative financing mechanisms to see that we're able to support our plans, because we actually do need them because of the the lives that have been claimed, the property that is being destroyed, and we said it's going to continue unless there are tangible interventions in that regard. And the last component you talked about on land use really then takes me back to Counsel Deo on land use. How can an individual or an entity that wants to acquire property ensure that the property they're acquiring is indeed available, but is also available for the purposes they actually want to put it to?
Thank you, Howard, and Dr. Architect Verna. Thank you for the very able submissions. You tickled me under when you talked about urbanization. I'm going to respond to your question, but before I do, I will have a question for you. Where do we cut the balance between urbanization and the need to safeguard the what? The environment. Because for me, I feel that is where we are losing it. Yes. We are failing to understand where to cut the what? The balance. Now, to respond to the question, I have 2 words for you. Due diligence, professionals. There was a clip going around after that flood that, if you're going to buy land in Uganda, buy it during the rainy what? Season. And everybody was laughing about it, but it's serious, it is. Yeah. Because during the dry season, you're going to find this land, dry indeed. Of course, they do a lot of backfilling. And you have a hot deal, quick. You pay, then it will rain. It didn't rain that much on the 26th of March. Wait for September, October, November. So due diligence. To investigate, if I may simplify it. Land is an asset. The doctor talked about urbanization. I normally give these stats. In 1900, 2 million Ugandans. 1962 at independence, 8 million. Today, we are well over 45, maybe over 50. The land mass is not what? Changing. So more reason for you to be keen, be alert. You must investigate. Land is a very important asset. The only one I know that doesn't depreciate in what? In value. So because it is that important to you, you must investigate. Now this is where the professionals come in. Engage an attorney or a law firm like Kalikumutima and Company Advocates that has the necessary diversity. Engage an architect. Engage a land surveyor, land valuer, quantity surveyor. You can engage a senior planner or a planner, depending on the nature or purpose of acquisition. Now, some people feel that due diligence is only necessary if you're going to acquire land for commercial purposes. No. even if it is residential. Now, when you engage these professionals, they are going to guide you. A lawyer, for example, will carry out a land search, both physical at the registry, interrogate the record, but also online. Now, why I refer to Kalikumutima and Company advocates, we have the necessary diversity. One-stop legal solution center. So the lawyer will be doing the search. Architect Verna, we are humbled to have her as one of our consultants, will work on the plans. The surveyors will go, registered surveyors. I must emphasize, we must engage registered. Because later I'm sure we'll be talking about remedies. That's the other thing that I'll touch. If you're dissatisfied with their service, you know where to run. So the land surveyor will go to the ground, ascertain the acreage, the boundaries, engage the locals. The architect will do her thing. The physical planner will ensure that the developments conform to the physical planning guidelines. The valuer, many people are cheated because they are not interested in valuations. Say, no, the land is 100 million. Wetland. Now, when you engage these professionals, they'll be able to detect. The surveyor is going to ask for the wetland or the floodplain maps. The surveyor, right now, I thank God that the system has been enhanced. Now it has reached the land information system. When you go onto the system, the parcel is linked. So it will give you a clear layout and show you this is a wetland. But at the end of the day, you have the discretion, final discretion, to overlook it or take it. That's why I alluded to Article 26. People say, no, I have the right to own property. So these professionals are going to get the necessary information, technical information, interpret it for you. Due diligence is very, very key. Allow me to emphasize once again, professionals, not people holding out. Because you will have a person who cannot interpret a cadastral print. You will have a person who does not know the process of having a building plan approved. Now you expect this person to come up with the drawing for you and go through the process. They will not. These are the people who are always looking for shortcuts. So if you're looking for safe, decent, and sustainable accommodation, you cannot run away from the professionals. At the end of the day, that hot deal is going to cost you a lot. Like we say where we come from, prevention is better than cure. Yeah, that's true. Hot deals, be very, very, very careful. Yeah. I submit.
Thank you so much, Counsel. On due diligence, I think that point cannot be, overstated. And sometimes we want, the quick deals. It's so good. You see a big parcel of land, you see the amount, it's not commensurate, and you just can't wait to purchase it. But then you've not done the due diligence, and one of the judges said that land is not like tomatoes, that you just find them wherever. It's actually real property. It's real property, and so you need to understand, to look beyond, what you're seeing to know. And the analogy that we give of, look at it in the rainy season, it's actually a form of due diligence of, okay, what does it look like, across the seasons that we have, for you to know that this is actually, legitimate. But also the component, maybe I want you to make mention of is even when it comes, maybe it will be part of physical planning, but the component of zoning as well. Because, for example, the land can be, yes, it's not in a wetland, it's available, but the purpose you want to put it to is not really acceptable, within that area. Maybe you can mention a bit about it, but I also know that Dr. Chiganda will make mention of it. We'll leave it to him. Okay, no problem. And we'll pick it on exactly from there, then we'll go into the rest of the discussion.
Sorry, maybe what I can add,
yes, Counsel,
that I forgot. I was more inclined to the environment angle.
Yeah.
The other bit of due diligence is to help you ascertain if there are any third-party interests.
Yes.
Encumbrances.
Yes.
Encumbrances. Now, I'm not going to go deep into the land grabbing discussion and but once you do this investigation, all this will be revealed. To have it elaborate, you have the right professional doing it for you. allow me add that.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counsel. Coming to Architect Verna, we talked about architectural designs, and we know now there are new trends, especially as Dr. Kiganda mentioned, that now we're looking at climate change and how we can undertake development in the face of the effects of climate change. And now we see a new trend with climate resilient infrastructure, climate resilient designs and architectural designs. From your perspective, but also from your experience, how is that playing out in Uganda? Are we picking on the global imperative to, even change how we are building and designing these buildings in the first place? But also, on your end, are we picking on, the global shift to climate resilient architectural designs and building practices? Are we really moving at that pace that we need to move at? Are we still having mindset challenges? How is the landscape when it comes to shifting to climate resilient infrastructure and architectural designs from your perspective and experience?
Well, it's a very, very broad question. When it comes to climate resilient construction, maybe if we even narrow down and say, flood resilient, sometimes it's all about money, because flood resilient, say, materials are those that will be able to withstand long amounts of time, say, underwater or something. So we're talking concrete, we're talking good brickwork, we're talking treated timber, which is expensive. So ideally, the best thing is not to build in a flood-prone area. We have wetland atlases. There's one for Kampala, very detailed, volume 1, and then volume 2 for the rest of the country. And it's clearly mapped where you should not go. So that should be the first step, avoid. But as you know, good land is not cheap. And people go where the land is affordable, not knowing that it's expensive in the long run. Now, another thing is to be very careful when you're a new person in an area, because chances are high that you will keep your compound, your house at a certain level, and then everyone around you will build higher, and you will become the sink. Your property will be the sink of the neighborhood. So what was originally very good, will cause you trouble. So you have to be sensitive when you're new in an area. One of the key things is to know at least where the road level is going to be, and you try to put your building higher than that. There is a factory, people may have seen YouTube videos about it in Namamve. They went in very fast. They built their factory. Then the road came, and it's higher than the factory. So somehow when it rains, the water doesn't flow very fast because the road is like a dam. It goes through whatever culverts, but not as fast as it used to. Yeah. And so this factory is actually I would call it a sink, and always flooding. It's amazing. So that is something that one has to look into. So where you build and how you build and what you build with will help. Then I got a building permit from Kira, and they were telling my client, plant at least 6 trees on your compound. So I think that is something good also, to avoid what they call heat islands. You green the area. So if we could green our compounds, if we could get open green spaces like public spaces, do a lot of greening, that should help as well, and many more things, but I can stop there.
Thank you, Architect Verna. And just hearing you share your thoughts just reminded me of a discussion we had the time when we were talking about condominiums, and it was to do with green buildings, understanding the concept of green buildings, buildings that are energy efficient, buildings that are green, like the green spaces even within these buildings, but also how the waste is managed in these buildings. Also considering the carbon footprint, as we call it, coming to the Convention on Climate Change of these buildings that are resilient, to the adverse effects or to the brunt of climate change as it manifests. It could be with the strong winds or with the flooding, and something you mentioned is to do with the cost, right? And we always say that in many global south countries, people do not choose things because they're probably more efficient or effective. Mostly, the critical component there is on cost, on affordability, because sometimes it could be available in a sense that it's on the market, but the cost, the incidental cost sort of makes it unavailable for a great chunk of the population, because of course many of them may not have the purchasing power that can enable them to sort of access some of these new technologies. And I hope part of our solutions we can think of and propose is how we can make some of these solutions, or how we can have policy incentives that make some of these solutions available and affordable to those that actually need them the most. And now that brings me back to you, Dr. Kiganda, on the question of the unplanned, informal, unregulated settlements in Kampala, of course, as a result of the population increase, but also with rural-urban migration that we are seeing, and of course that is leading, of course, to the encroachment on swamps. And so, on your end, how do you see that shaping and affecting, or how has it affected already? And I know it has, the implementation of any of the, the physical development plans that we have in Kampala at present.
I think the unplanned settlements, together with other factors, have made it hard to realize the benefits of physical planning. The truth of the matter is that physical planning should inform the development of urban areas. The practice in Uganda is that planning comes after development. Yeah, it is an afterthought. And the worst part of it is that it seems to be an unliked regulation. People don't appreciate that we need to live in a planned environment. And this, coupled with the land tenure system and constitutional provisions of rights of land, have made the planning challenge a very big challenge. The fiscal planners have to think very critically and work backwards to ensure that there is some order. They have to be more innovative than ever before. And they need to be facilitated to be more regulatory in nature, to realize the benefits of what you talked about as resilient cities. Otherwise, it is a mess. And this mess is driven by very many factors, some of them historical. The first factor is that as a country, we have no national land use plan. We enacted the Physical Planning Act, and we have the Physical Planning Development Plan, but we have no land use plan. And physical developments are just an ingredient of the land use. Not all land is used for physical development. So before you even come up with a physical development plan, the question would be, does this land support the physical infrastructure I want to put here? Or is it the best use I can put to this land by developing this physical infrastructure? Without it, the physical planning on a good plan on a land that does not support that land use is doomed to fail. Okay? Because, first of all, the land must support the physical infrastructure. The characteristics, the classification of that land should be a land, for example, for for a skyscraper. But if a land is not meant for the skyscraper, coming up with a very good architecture plan of a skyscraper, the physical infrastructure to put there on a land that is not meant to support that skyscraper, it is a time bomb. The infrastructure will be there, but it will not be resilient and sustainable. Soon issues will come and bring it down. I think as a physical planning profession, we have to think beyond the existing regulatory frameworks. One, we need to put emphasis on what we call the green infrastructures. The green infrastructures, the infrastructures that would support the physical infrastructure, but in a green environment. The architecture design should integrate the blue, the gray, and the green infrastructure into an integrated physical infrastructure plan.
One might wonder, those colors, what do they represent? When you say that
when I said the blue infrastructure, I am looking up to the water infrastructures. We need water like rivers, like lakes, like what? The green infrastructure is the green vegetation, the green spaces. Then the blue infrastructure are the engineering works, the construction works that are put on that land. We need to have an integrated compromise. And these infrastructures should be supporting one another. For example, if we have the drainage plan, should be supported by the greening plan and the bluing plan. The trenches constructed to carry water should be supported by a green neighborhood, so that in excess, if this water is unable to be contained into the drainage, at least it goes to a green infrastructure nearby without affecting us. Or we would channel all this water into the lake, the blue infrastructure or the river that is there, through an integrated planning approach. We need to do something even at household level. At household level, we need to embrace doctrines of rain gardens and rain harvesting. By law, every infrastructure approved must show how it is going to either harvest rain or to garden it. And these are two different concepts. To harvest rain, maybe you put a reservoir where that rain will come, and it is only the excess out of that reservoir should go to State Council to pass through its drainage system. But the most effective is the rain gardening. The rain gardening, we dig trenches in our properties to bring this rain back into the soil, where it could easily permeate and go back. There we are growing rain, bringing rain from the roofs back into the soil, so that it could support the soil texture. Because the constraints of an urban area is to cause difficulty in permeability of water. Whenever there is urbanization, we build roads, we build houses, we build infrastructures, water can no longer go down. Permeation, it can no longer go down in the soil. So in the US, for example, they have enforced it. Infrastructures must garden rain. So that this rain that flows could go back into the soil at source of generation. It is only when the rain has become too much that it cannot, that it has fulfilled your rain garden, that it is allowed to go into council drainage channels. Secondly, the communities should be involved. It's not about physical planning to solve problems. The community should be involved in managing the flood crisis. For example, there is community education. They know which rains flood. In the community, they will tell you when rain is coming from that direction, it's going to be very bad. And when you do like this, the rain will not be this. So community involvement in managing the flooding crisis is essential. Because they know. But the current structure excludes any community knowledge. And we assume flood management is exclusively a role of engineers and physical planners. That's why they say KCCA should do this, KCCA should do this, but the communities themselves participate in clogging the drainage channels. They have made our drainage channels toilets. So we need to include them in the way we manage the floods. 3, we need to map out a flood zones and enforce stricter regulations to ensure that activities don't take place in a flood zone. The Chambogo area is a known flood zone. Why do you proceed to license businesses to operate in a flood zone that you know? You know it very well, it is a flood zone. You know Namamve is a flood zone. Why do you go ahead to license factories of your friends to operate in an area where you know that they will not survive for long? It's not resilient. It is a flood zone. If you can map out the flooding zone, then we should have infrastructures that can cope with the flooding. We need an integrated approach to managing these floods. Because you don't go to issue license to somebody to operate a business in a zone which you know is a flood zone.
Right. Yeah.
And later you start lamenting about the consequences. That's what I say, that flooding is a problem of problems. It is a problem of problems. 3, anyway, if physical planning and engineering and architecture work has to do something, we need more drainage channels. Let us not neglect. We need more channels. Those of you who have gone to Dar es Salaam, before managing the flooding and after, you have seen that intensive and resilient infrastructures can reduce urban flooding. Resilient infrastructures can do something. Coupled with behavior change, they can do something. We should not continue. We know very well that at Chambogo, there must be a big drainage channel at Chambogo. Why do you have to wait all along for the rains to come? We know it is supposed to be there and should be supported by the blue and green infrastructures. The blue is when the water is carved out of the Chambogo flooding zone, where does it go? It should be channeled up to the next blue infrastructure, to the next river or lake. And this should be supported by green infrastructure. So that in case it fails, there is also a green space that is able to attract it. Government need to educate people.
Right. Yeah.
The dangers of flooding are not dangers of flooding per se. They are dangers of urban mismanagement culminating into urban flooding, which I said in the beginning that it is a biblical curse. It is one of the curses we know God say, I will send you floods. Now he has sent, and God sent those curses when people had wronged. So we are wrong, we are doing wrong things. That's why they are flooding. We should not think about addressing the flooding without addressing the urban mismanagement that is resulting into
flooding. Wow, Doctor, thank you so much. You make very, thought-provoking, submissions. And at that time when we had the whole crisis with the flooding, we published an article here on, and were indicating clearly based on research that what you call a problem of problems, were indicating that the flooding is not a cause in itself. It's a symptom of a greater governance question, especially when it comes to how we are enforcing the laws on physical planning, on zoning, but also when it comes to waste management, because we saw that in many scenarios, many of the drainage channels we have already are clogged with plastics, with cavera, with all sorts, of waste. And we're saying that this is not sustainable, because even if we construct more drainage channels, but we have not dealt with how we are, enforcing the planning regulations, the zoning regulations, the waste management regulations. It's like a wide array of problems that are now, sort of culminating into the flooding, and that we need to rethink how we are, undertaking and enforcing the laws that are related to, of course, waste management, to urban planning, to physical planning, but also when it comes to the standards as well of the buildings, especially now as we get into the discussion on green buildings. So thank you very much, Doctor. Very thought-provoking submissions from you. Coming back to Counsel Deo, you mentioned earlier on a component that I think is very important when it comes to remedies, and redress, because some people do not even know that you can hold a professional accountable. It could be a lawyer, it could be a surveyor, it could be an architect, because many of the regulators for all these professionals, but people might not know. So when it comes to remedies, I would like you to share your thoughts, and twofold really. One, remedies when it comes to the professionals that are engaged, but also remedies when it comes to holding duty bearers accountable for not doing their part to avert the flooding crisis that we have experienced. And statistics show that if we continue, with this trajectory, we're going to continue experiencing them, and they're probably going to be of a greater magnitude. So on the one hand, professionals, on the other hand, looking at duty bearers that are actually accountable and should be held accountable for the flooding crisis. What remedies exist for those that were affected?
Thank you, Howard. Let me split it two ways.
Yeah.
Public sector and private sector. We can discuss the professionals and the private sector.
Yeah.
Now, but I'll start with the the duty bearers.
Yeah.
I had the privilege of representing diaspora at a meeting that was convened by the IGG. That was last year. After that crisis, developers, shoddy works, there was an uproar. I actually want to salute the Honorable Inspector General of Government, Honorable Betty Kamya. She did an exceptional job. There's a report as to whether the actions were implemented. That is a story for another day. But at least the developers were called to what? No, the office bearers were called to book. Certain things came out to the light. So on the part of the public sector, a public servant, and there's a reason why you're called a public servant, for heaven's sake. You are serving. It is from the word serve. You owe a duty to the ordinary Ugandan. But how are we discharging these duties? We have construction in wetlands approved. They are approved plans. So the first line of remedy is through administrative interventions. Homeowners petitioned, I will use that as an example again, petitioned the office of the IGG because there was an uproar. And she took certain steps. So that is an administrative what? Intervention. Now, the IGG or the office of the IGG has the mandate to investigate and prosecute. So people can actually be brought to what? To book. Finally, if these cases end up in court, after finality of prosecution, there are going to be convictions. There are going to be sentences. We are yet to see the outcome. So I'm not going to comment so much about it because it is an ongoing what? Process. But they are administrative interventions. Other than the office of the IGG, we have Minister of Lands. The Minister of State for Urban Development, Honorable Princess Pasis Namuganza, was also actively involved in this process, and she actually called upon people to move her office, file complaints with evidence, and the office is ready and willing to address these concerns. That is another angle that can be taken, an administrative what? Intervention. Later I'll talk about the challenges that come with these, they're expensive and what, but administrative interventions are not purposed to take as long as, for example, a court process would, and they are not purposed to be as what? As expensive. Then you did touch professionals. We have Architect Verna here, we have Doctor, the senior planner, you have your humble servant here. If I mess up in any way, we have what? A law counsel. You have recourse. You can make a complaint, but this complaint should be meritorious. It should be backed up by evidence. Okay? The surveyors have a surveyors registration board. The engineers, actually, when we were at that meeting with the IGG, the president of the engineers registration board was challenging the homeowners. He said, none of you have complained to us. So that is another fora, administrative, where people can complain. As to whether timely action is taken, that is a different issue. And there has to be a cocktail of solutions. So you can do both the administrative interventions, or you can go to court through public interest litigation. Right. The courts have taken cognizance of the need to protect environmental what? Rights. The case of Greenwatch versus Attorney General, 2009. Court came out strongly and clearly. Of course, court is a process. We are complaining about backlog every day. But I believe we must appreciate what is in place. At least there's a medium. The other is Parliament of Uganda. They make these laws. They have committees. Committee on Environment, the committee is there. Land management. How are we utilizing this? You can petition. As a Ugandan, you can actually petition the Parliament of Uganda and say, hey, you're making these laws, but we have all these gaps here. And of course, as a Christian, I would say, pray to God. For me, that is usually my first what? Remedy. Of course, like I said, maybe I should just touch the challenges at this point.
Yes, please.
One, the delays. Even with the administrative interventions, with respect, these offices are busy. They do their best, like I said, the IGG did her best. The Minister of State for Urban Development did her best, but the offices are what? Are busy, so you may not get timely results. Secondly, for court, we have issues of backlog. And this is an appeal to the Honorable, the Chief Justice of the Republic of Uganda. Climate change is a reality. Global warming is upon us. They need to give these cases priority. You see the priority that we give to election petitions. Now we are entering the cycle. 3 months, you must have judgment. I appeal to the government of the Republic of Uganda, to the Honorable, the Chief Justice, to the principal judge, to the deputy chief justice, the whole hierarchy. They need to give priority to environmental cases. Then to the people that have the mandate, like the IGG and the ministers and the commissioners, yes, you are busy. We do appreciate and we salute you for the efforts thus far, but we request for timely, expeditious disposal of these what? Complaints. Then, of course, there are the logistics challenges now, or the part of investigators. Yeah. The ratio of one policeman to Uganda, I think it is 1 to 100,000 or 1 to... We do not have enough what? Manpower. Then some of these aspects are a bit technical. You need to bring on board environmentalists. Again, we salute the NGOs that are doing an exceptional job.
Yes.
In terms of advocacy, that are trying to supplement the the public sector. Then the processes are expensive.
Yes, that's true.
The processes are expensive.
Yeah.
I thank God Kalikumutima and Company Advocates is a Christian firm, so the services that we offer are discounted.
Yeah.
So we appeal to our colleagues to do the same, because the burden, the financial burden, defeats what we are trying to achieve. Like I said, the NGOs are doing an exceptional job. Those that are well-meaning, some are not. Some turn every discussion into politics. Of course, politics now is the other challenge.
Yeah.
Why do we have to politicize everything in this country? Someone is going to say, well, it happens everywhere in the world, but let's bring it context-specific to Uganda. Political interference, selective action.
Yeah, major issue.
You're saying, do not, Doctor was eloquently submitting about urban development, do not build here. Deo puts a structure, you demolish. X, I'm not going to name and shame here. We'll have another engagement, by the way, I think we should name and shame.
Yeah.
X, right in the road reserve, cannot be touched.
Yeah.
Then you'll see NEMA on TV, all over the place, cameras. Luigi and wherever. That is good. We must appreciate the efforts being done, but they should not be selective.
Should be a just and fair implementation.
Just and fair implementation. Like I said, Doctor, where should the balance be between urban development and protecting the environment? That question is going to continue looming. But now as we implement, we should be just, we should be fair. We shouldn't have Abana Nebiana. No!
Right.
Maybe that's why people keep politicizing these issues.
Yeah, true.
I'll stop here before I go political.
Counsel, interesting. Thank you so much. Yeah. So coming to, as we begin to land the plane, Architect Verna, what are some of the challenges that you have seen, in the work that you do, that have sort of hindered you, and generally the profession of architects from, adopting some of these designs, that are climate resilient, but can also help us really, sort of better how we are designing these buildings and, this infrastructure, even when we have the flooding crisis? What are some of those challenges that you've experienced that have sort of created barriers, when it comes to the designs of these buildings, especially now that we are grappling with, issues to do with the climate crisis and flooding and environmental disasters?
Well, I could say that maybe lack of urban planning guidance, because sometimes it's not just about the building, but about the neighborhood. Yes. The neighborhood should have standards, and then the architect follows the standards. So we have a challenge that most of our plans, urban plans, physical plans, are high level. So we need the detailed plans to be facilitated, and then these guide the architect from neighborhood to neighborhood. But from this discussion, I've just thought about something. We talk about the flood in Bwaise, but we don't talk about where that water is coming from. Exactly. I think we have to broaden the discussion and also ask, where is this water coming from? So when someone tells you Katanga, Chinawataka, Kisenyi, the water is coming from Namirembe, Old Kampala, all these places that can do something. So I think that is something that has come to mind. And one more thing, I think professionals need to work together. I'll give an example. The Southern Bypass was planned before the Northern Bypass, but the Northern Bypass was built before because there was hardly any habitation. It didn't have all these compensation issues. So there's a time, you can turn the clock back on Google Earth and see. You see how a place is changing. You just keep shifting the years. So if you try to do that for the Northern Bypass, for different sections of the Northern Bypass, you'll see something green turning brown. So the question is, when the engineers were planning and building the road, did they involve the environmentalists? Did they involve the physical planners? Did they Because one of the terrible images of the flood was the northern bypass.
Yes,
yeah. And what if there was like a 30-meter green band, allowed for and protected? Wouldn't it have been better? But now people have built right up to the road. And then when you look at the Entebbe Expressway, they tried to work together to stop that. So we need to work together sometimes. It's not just about building a road, but then that road changes the social dynamics, changes everything, environmental. We need to work together to solve this. So like I said, 3 things. 1, where does the water come from? And then 2, like I said, we work together. And the 3rd point, but we'll pick it somewhere. But that's what I can submit.
Thank you, Architect Verna. So coming to Dr. Kiganda, looking now as we get into the discussion on solutions, what are some of those technologies, new practices that you have seen probably elsewhere and can serve as best practices for us, but also even here locally? Are we doing anything to come up with these new solutions on how we can do our fiscal planning better to address the flooding crisis, but also in the grander scheme of the climate crisis?
Thank you very much. The nature of solutions depends on the nature of the problems, causes and consequences of these floods. We may not have a universal solution to the flooding, because the case of Uganda, there are some points that have to be made clear, and some misconceptions that we must accept before we even go to look for solutions. The first misconception, which we must agree, is that flooding is not essentially a wetland-driven problem. We have seen flooding in Kampala in areas that are not wetlands. So, because whenever we talk about flooding, the benchmark solution is protect wetlands. The assumption is that flooding only takes place in or because of wetlands. The best definition is that we must map out the flooding zones, and each flooding zone has interventions that can address it. We have a drainage dilemma, for example, where construction of a drainage system causes flooding to the areas just next to that drainage system, because the engineers are concerned about protecting the road infrastructure against the rains. They are not concerned where that rain that has been diverted from the roadside is going to go. And some drainage channels are directed towards residential areas, causing intensified flooding. This is what we call a flooding dilemma. The dilemma caused by even the interventions. The solutions, they have to be multi-faced. We need solutions at homestead, personal level. We need solutions at city or municipal governance levels. We need solutions at national level, and we also need solutions at global level. At national level, the primary intervention. At household level, the generator of water flows must have solutions for it. I've talked about harvesting, water harvesting, and rain gardening. as critical interventions that must be done by every infrastructure owners. If you are taking a picture of Kampala and the buildings and the malls in Kampala, none of them is either harvesting nor farming. So all the waters that would have impenetrated the soil below Kampala Road are donated to KCCA to take responsibility. And sometimes KCCA fails because the responsibility is too much. The architects, I sometimes have challenges with you. How do you, there are architectural designs that protect flooding, for example, green top houses. Right. Yes. How can you, for God's sake, and professionally, proceed to have architectural designs with iron roofs in a city? Every structure in a city must have a green roof to harvest the waters that would have gone down. Should be on the top of every building. There must be a garden with the capacity to attract water that would have originally fallen in the spaces occupied by that plot. And this should be by law, by regulation, by architecture through your bodies. For God's sake, how do you make a design of iron sheets in a city, in the city center? Their buildings are approved with iron sheets without harvesting, without rain farming. And KCCA is concerned about the small money they get from approving the plans. They don't know that that money is generating a bigger challenges they can never address. Yeah. Because stop. Yeah. Even now, even on structures that have already been built, let it be by regulation that the last floor of every building in the central business district is a green roofed building. So that we go in to make direct intervention to treat the problem. When it comes to the engineering, when you create drainage channels, the question should be to where? Where, okay, you are diverting water from this road, but where is it going to go? Yeah, that's very critical. Because you are creating floods to the neighboring community who have no capacity to construct their own channels. You are harvesting all this water that will have been on Kampala Road, diverting it to vulnerable communities that have no capacity to construct drainage channels to take it up to the next blue infrastructures. The government at council level have finished. At national level, government needs to integrate its policies. We need roads, we need industries, we need investors, we need this, but let this be integrated. Let us not do things contradictory. Today we are discussing urban planning. Yesterday I had the Minister of Investment saying he's going to allocate more land in Namamve. Wow. In a flood zone. Imagine. And he's doing very well. I want investors, my investors, but you are not coordinating. The other time I asked the Commissioner Minister of Environment, can't you integrate? Is it that investors must always do business in wetlands? Because this is the cheapest land you can access. But what are the consequences? The consequences, yes. Yeah. At global level, we are experiencing flooding arising out of climate change. And the causes of this climate change are not entirely Ugandan causes.
Yeah, that's true.
They are cutting across the globe, and they are generators of the greenhouse gases, which are eventually brought to us by monsoon winds to come and disturb the tropical areas. What can they do about their greenhouse gas emission? I thank you, coordinator. This is a big discussion.
No, it's a big discussion.
Which we cannot have in 1 hour or 2.
Yeah, true.
Probably we need to disintegrate it into small aspects so that we handle the architectural aspects of flood management.
Yes, true.
The physical planning aspects of
Then the legal
governance aspect, the legal aspect of physical planning, of flooding in the cities. The social and the cultural aspects of flooding in the cities. So that maybe we have a deep dive into all of these and come up with recommendations to be undertaken by different stakeholders.
Thank you, Dr. Kiganda. Very thought-provoking indeed, as has been with the previous ones. But I agree with you. I think it's such a broad discussion, and I feel we can't do it just, even if we expanded the discussion to another hour, also we would still not cover it. But I also think it's a good candidate for a national dialogue. We could even have maybe, panel discussions on, now this panel discussion is on the physical planning component. This one is on the architectural component. This one on the governance and legal component, and then probably can have an outcome document of that stakeholders engagement with critical suggestions and proposals on what needs to be done, so we can even follow up with our duty bearers, but also recognizing the role that we play. For example, I know Architect Verna, you are renowned with with architecture, and in the industry, but you can be that voice, in the industry that is championing some of these solutions. Counsel, from the legal perspective, I know you're an environmentalist at heart, right? I know we are doing some work as well here, and I want to thank you for championing the work we are doing here when it comes to environmental sustainability, but when it comes to mobilizing stakeholders nationally, across the board, because as you mentioned, we need to work together. And I think that takes us back to even the SDGs number 17, that the need for partnerships here, because the challenges we face today, we cannot solve them individually or single-handedly, either as a nation or even as individuals. We can't. We need to work together, see those synergies, explore them, and see how we can address these challenges. So I would like to just invite you then to share your parting shots, in light of the discussion we've had. It's been very broad, and it's an injustice on your end. To really just give you 2 minutes, but given the time that we have, that's really what we can afford. And I just want to invite you to share your parting shots. And I know I didn't mention this when Dr. Kiganda was sharing when making the final submissions. So I'll give you a minute also to just share your parting shots comprehensively on the discussion we have had, but also looking forward on what can be done. And then we shall do it in reverse order, coming all the way back to Counsel Deo. Dr. Kiganda, in a minute also, your parting shots.
I thank you very much. I think the conversations about urban floodings are very timely. Yes. Because we are just starting the pandemic. If we see what urban flooding is doing to the Asian countries, ours, I think it is the beginning. They have been very, very destructive. They have caused loss of property. They have caused death. They have damaged the infrastructures. And they have made the concept of urban livability very difficult to experience. We need to go on with this conversation with more stakeholders, probably coming up with policy briefs to advise government on what we can do. But the closing remarks that flooding is a problem of problems caused by very many failed urban management systems, and to address it, we must have an integrated multi-sectoral approach for it to be put to order. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kiganda, and thank you very much indeed for sharing, your very thoughtful, very thought-provoking insights. And we can't wait to have you on our next engagement, or as and when we're able to convene the stakeholders for a deeper delve into the discussion we have had. Architect Verna, your parting shots.
Yes, I just wanted to add on to the discussion of the problem of problems. Because the blockage of drainage channels is one of the causes of flooding, then I asked myself, to what extent did the Chitezi disaster then now, because in the city, garbage collection has been terrible. To what extent has it also, so it's like he said, the problem causing more problems. But ultimately, I think we need to have more sustainable architectural designs, like he said. And I think that's something that the society, the fraternity of architects, should look into seriously.
Thank you, Dr. Verna, and thank you so much for joining us again from the last time we had the discussion on condominium, and even today sharing your insights. We don't take that for granted. Thank you so much for setting aside time to join us, but also to get to share your thoughts and experience with our listeners and viewers as well. Counsel Deo, your parting shots.
I will quickly start where my sister stopped. I'm glad you talked about Chitezi. Howard and I were having a discussion a few weeks ago.
Yes.
The landfill is now on Mitiana Road. Should be around or before Bujuko. There is urgent need to investigate what is happening. KCC, we are putting you on notice. We're talking about public interest litigation. We are coming. We have learnt nothing, yet forgotten everything. That is a disaster waiting to happen, yet it is new. We already have evidence. It is sad. Chitezi was bad enough. People lost lives. This is a new site. I have shared with you the evidence. You have seen it. And we are working on public interest litigation immediately. Not for politics. This is for present and future generations, as espoused in the Constitution. Objective 27. We are talking about sustainability. Let us not be cosmetic about these issues. Let us be proactive. You're saying sustainability for the camera. But in practice, what are you doing? Let us be intentional. And the duty is not incumbent on the state alone, on government, on every Ugandan. Like I said, every right has an attendant duty. We must do our part.
Right.
I actually challenge the private sector to take lead on. Don't leave it to the public sector. They are not going to do anything for you. And even for the private sector, we shouldn't leave it for the gallery. Corporate social responsibility.
Exactly.
Selfie. Ka-ching-ching. Oh, we planted trees. Then while you drive away, you're throwing the kavera.
Yeah.
There was another very excuse my diction. There was another disturbing video of a KCCA cleaner pushing into the drainage. Kavera.
Yes. Can you imagine?
Now, if you come out and say, politics, I thank God that I do not even look that direction. I'm just intentional, well-meaning Ugandan, calling upon other well-meaning Ugandans to do our part. We must save ourselves, we must save our children, our grandchildren. That is sustainability. We must safeguard the present and push for the future. We must be very intentional. Now, you said you want to rally the stakeholders. They are not easy to get, but I will pray for you. You call them for dialogue, having such discussions. Now you're going to call me on your podcast. This one has not allowed me. I need this approval. All manner of excuses. And after the person is going to send you a message, your inbox. Counsel, that was a very good presentation. Why?
Imagine.
If you're not doing anything wrong, why shy away from dialogue?
Yeah, we've actually experienced
Yes,
that.
because I'm one of the many of you Ugandans who are going to tell you this government is doing certain things right. there are also several things they are doing wrong.
Yeah.
So for the good things that you're doing, come and take credit.
For it.
And for the ones that you're not,
Yeah.
put in place measures to address. Don't shy away from dialogue.
Yeah.
Don't.
Yeah.
I'm not turning this into a quarrel. I'm just fairly energetic and very what? Passionate. I'm sure doctor would not what? Would not relate.
Yeah.
But I want to thank Kalikumutima and Company Advocates and Howard, our team lead, for leading us in this discussion. This firm is going to continue doing its part to fill the information void.
Yes.
We are going to continue doing our part in advocacy.
Yeah.
We are going to lead from the front. We are not going to shy away. Like I said, this is not about what? Politics.
Yeah.
So help us God, for God and my country.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Counsel, and thank you so much for the passion. I was about to say, it seems like you're powered by renewable energy, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, but thank you so much. And on our end, of course, this discussion feeds into our grand aspiration to and commitment to filling that knowledge gap, because, and even scripture says, it's God himself saying, my people are perishing, and they perish, because of the lack of knowledge, and the truth, and the truth will set you free. Something we're talking about, in preparation for this, that many people do not know. For example, when you look at the National Environment Act that Counsel Deo alluded to, particularly Section 55, it says that because it draws parameters drawing from Section 54 on restrictions on, the utilization of wetlands. And the penalty for that is 12 years imprisonment and about 30,000 currency points. If you multiply by 20,000, it's about 600 million. You can imagine that's the penalty, And we usually say and also, depending on the judge can say both the 12 years and the 30,000 currency points, the 600 million, or either, which is really, you don't want, which is a risk on your end, either as an entity, a corporate entity, or even as an individual. And many people do not know. But also, I think, drawing from the discussion we've had, the critical importance of enforcing the law equitably and just. You don't just choose that now for the indigent we shall implement, for the quote-unquote untouchables we shall not. I think that also really draws us back to the question, that Dr. Kiganda talked about in the beginning, that what we see is a problem of problems that we said that, it's an indicator of a greater governance crisis that we actually have in Kampala, especially when it comes to the physical planning, the enforcement of, the environment, building, physical planning laws, but also when it comes to the creation of awareness. In environmental, one of the principles there is public participation, involving the public, involving the masses, both to hold duty bearers accountable, but also because ultimately on this end, they're also contributing in a way or another, but also when it comes to addressing some of the challenges. If you rally the masses, you'll be surprised. We saw it with the pandemic. We saw a lot of publicity that you should wear the mask, you should do social distancing, you should sanitize, and it actually worked for us here. You see, but we also saw it when it came to the AIDS scourge with the ABCs. That really getting the masses to understand in simple terms where the problem is and how they can contribute, and that is why I was proposing, and I think Doctor also talked about policy briefs to reduce some of these solutions to language can be understood by the masses, but also the policy makers, to see that we are all pulling towards the same direction. As Verna mentioned, that we need to work together, we need to contribute our expertise. Imagine a seasoned physical planner, a seasoned architect, a seasoned legal practitioner coming together to contribute a solution. Imagine how robust that would be. So thank you so much, Dr. Kiganda. Thank you so much, Architect Verna, and our very good host, Counsel Deo. Thank you so much for championing the discussion and for pushing us to ensure that we are contributing our part to filling that knowledge divide. To our listeners and our audience, want to thank you so much for joining in, and we'd like to invite you to engage with us on our socials at Kalikumutima Law, and that is on X, Kalikumutima and Company Advocates on LinkedIn, but even on the other social media platforms like Instagram, but also even our website as well. You can reach out to us so we can, get to engage more on this discussion. But also, Counsel mentioned about the, avenues where you want to seek redress and you're aggrieved. We're also able to extend our legal services to you in that regard to ensure that you receive the justice that you deserve. Thank you so much. Until next time, I remain Howard Mwesigwa, Team Lead Energy, Environment and Sustainability here at Kalikumutima and Company Advocates. Thank you so much.
Kalikumutima and Company Advocates, translating visions into reality. For more information, visit our website www.kalikumutima.com.